What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Jalen Green is not going to China just yet. As always, God damn it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Jalen Green is not going to China quite yet. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about the Houston Rockets. I personally believe that the Houston Rockets are one of the most interesting storylines in the NBA at the beginning part of this season. There were quite a few topics that I considered talking about today. You have, of course, the Clippers' disastrous run since acquiring James Harden. You have Memphis being arguably the worst team in the league, although that's not something I really wanted to talk too much about. You have the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. You have Philadelphia, who's playing well. Shout out to Tyrese Maxey. I'm also wishing a speedy recovery to Kelly Oubre Jr., who, of course, got struck by that car a couple nights ago. To me, the one thing that I couldn't stop thinking about recently is the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets are, believe it or not, one of the best teams in the NBA right now. At the time of this recording, they are 6-3. They are the fourth best team in the Western Conference. They have just rattled off 6 straight victories. They beat Denver a few nights ago. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Pelicans. They beat Sacramento twice. And I believe they beat Charlotte as well. Damn, look at me go 6 for 6, baby. The Houston Rockets are dominating. This is such a weird thing to say considering the fact that Houston was actually the worst team in the league last season. I mean, they went like 17-65, 22-60. I'm sorry, they were like the third worst team in the league. But there are actual tangible reasons for this. They have revamped their defense entirely. They are seeing guys like Alperon Şengün make the leap on offense. They're seeing Jalen Green continue to be a relatively decent offensive player, even though he still has some flaws that he can overcome. They, of course, added Fred VanVleet this summer to a massive contract that was rather questionable, but it was something they had to do. I believe like they had to do it, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to reach the salary floor. Something like that. They also acquired Dylan Brooks. They acquired Jeff Green as well. And as much as we could talk about the offensive improvements surrounding this team, they are only a little bit better than they were last season. So currently their offensive rating is 114 according to Basketball Reference. Last season their offensive rating was 111.4. There are weapons on this team. As I already mentioned, Fred VanVleet, who is arguably the best player on this team, averaging damn near 17 and 8. They finally have a legitimate point guard. Not to say that Jalen Green is incapable of facilitating, but I don't see his career panning out that way. He strikes me more as like an undersized shooting guard, which he can fit in this system. And then, of course, Green himself is shooting 40% from three. Granted, his two-pointer, his efficiency from two still leaves a lot to be desired. There are still some questions surrounding his shot decision making, but again, he's 21 years old. I'm not going to rail on him too hard right now because I still think that there's probably another year or two of development ahead for him. Alperon Şengün is quickly becoming one of the better young forwards in the league. Is averaging 19, 8, and 6, adding in 1 steal, shooting 60% from the field. He is an offensive revelation for them. Şengün provides so many interesting wrinkles to the offense. He can play on the perimeter in like kind of a Sabonis type role, like not like a Jokic type role because Jokic is way ahead in terms of playmaking, but his ability to facilitate is huge, much like Sabonis can, much like Embiid can. At times, he's very good in the pick and roll. He's a good isolation player as well. He's a burgeoning talent in the post to go along with all of that. Really, the only thing missing from his arsenal is a three-point shot. Pardon me. If I sound a little nasally to you, which I probably do, I am getting over a little bit of a cold. I'm like 90% of the way there, but I needed to talk about the Houston Rockets before these thoughts evaded me. What is more paramount to their improvement than their offense is their defense. I took down some notes. I got this big fucking notebook that I keep all of my basketball notes in. This season, I feel like I feel like this is a fucking story time. This season, according to the NBA, the Rockets' offensive rating is 108.1, which is the fifth highest or the fifth best rating in the league. The fifth best in the entire league. Not the fifth best in the division, not the fifth best in the conference, the fifth best in the entire NBA. What it was last year, 118.6. That is a 10.5 point improvement per 100 possessions. That is remarkable. I don't care what way you try to look at it. That is a jump that I can't remember any team making in recent memory because teams just don't do that. You don't just have a plus 10 differential in any defensive metric unless you acquire some sort of defensive superstar, which they did not do. I will get into that in a little bit, but they did not. At no point did the Rockets bring in like a Jaren Jackson Jr. or a Nick Claxton or a Rudy Gobert. In terms of points per game allowed, this one sticks out more than anything else. Last season, 118.6. This season, 105.8. 13-point per game improvement. And their pace has not changed that much either. I believe there's only like a 3 possession difference between last year and this year. So they're getting more possessions and allowing fewer points, which of course leads to the much improved defensive efficiency. But I don't think we can overstate this. The Dillon Brooks edition was tremendous. Say what you will about Dillon Brooks. I have a couple of videos ragging on Dillon Brooks for just how the way he played in the postseason last year. I don't think he was exempt from slander in any way. When you play like shit, folks should be able to say that you play like shit. But one thing about that, even when Dillon Brooks was shooting 7% from three, he was still a force to be reckoned with on defense. As much of a meme as he is, as villainous as he tried to be, it remained the fact that he was a very, very good defender, damn near an elite defender. I don't know if I want to say elite quite yet, but a very, very good defender. Definitely a net positive on defense. That addition was huge for them. They also brought in Jeff Green. I love Uncle Jeff. I think he's tremendous, especially on a young team as a veteran. Jayshawn Tate as well has looked pretty good on defense in terms of being disruptive, poking balls loose on the perimeter. I think he's averaging like 1.5 steals per game thus far. But before we get into the weeds here, a couple more stats that I want to drop. They are second in 3-point percentage allowed and sixth points in the paint allowed. Not only is this an elite defensive team, this is a well-rounded defensive team. Sometimes coaches will come in and they will have a game plan in which they either try to take away the three or they try to take away the paint. Generally, I don't want to say generally, but I feel like the consensus is that run guys off the 3-point line because even though there are more efficient shots close to the basket, the points don't pile up as quickly. All right, you give up 3 threes, it's 9 points. You give up 3 layups, it's 6 points. It's math. If you score more points than the other team, you win the basketball game. The Rockets are just taking away everything from their opponents. They're locked down on the perimeter. They are very good inside the paint. I think a large reason for that is Şengün, believe it or not, who doesn't have the reputation quite yet of being like a stalwart defender, but he has improved considerably. Last season, his defended field goal percentage inside of 6 feet was 61.6%. This year, it's 56.5%. Keep in mind, this is a smaller big. He's only like 6'9", I believe. Not very athletic. Does not have the greatest wingspan in the world. Like this is not like a Draymond Green type undersized big we're talking about. Someone who is just a fucking walking defensive anchor. No, Şengün was not good on defense last year, but he is now. And still, all of the ancillary pieces allow Houston to hide Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet, who are... Jalen Green is definitely one of the worst defensive guards in the league. Fred VanVleet, he is small, but he's competitive on defense, at least. I mean, let's not forget the organization he came from. Nick Nurse, the Toronto Raptors, like, you had to compete defensively with that squad. Now, I mentioned Dillon Brooks, I mentioned Jeff Green, but we have to address the elephant in the room here. This team would not be as good as they are defensively if not for Ime Udoka. We, as NBA fans, as NBA analysts, as content creators, as media personnel, we tend to underrate the importance of coaching because a lot of the time we talk about coaching in regards to the elite teams where it matters significantly less than coaching on young teams. If you're Steve Kerr or if you were Steve Nash with the Nets or if you were Mike Budenholzer with the Bucks, your job was significantly different. When you're on a contending team, when you're the coach of a contending team with a lot of star power, your main job is managing egos and tempering the locker room, keeping everyone's heads on straight, because Giannis is going to go out there and do his thing. Kevin Durant's going to go out there and do his thing. LeBron James is going to go out there and do his thing. Luka, Booker, all the superstars, they're going to go out and they're going to win you games. It's just how it goes. You have to have a loose game plan offensively and defensively, but generally older, more experienced veterans who are still hyper talented, they can get away with not being coached as much. When you have a young team like the Houston Rockets, coaching matters. Coaching matters to a degree that I cannot articulate, because not only are you trying to have these guys develop good habits, you want them to know that you believe in them, and that regardless of all their shortcomings, you are going to be there for them, and you are going to put them in positions where they excel. That is the job that Ime Udoka took this summer. He's coming in to one of the worst teams in the NBA, a team with no identity, a team with good players who needed to be utilized properly. And what did he do? He came in, he's taken this team and made them an elite defense and a very good offense. I think that Ime Udoka just has a way of commanding respect in the locker room. I mean, he is a very all of the off-court stuff aside, I think when it comes to basketball and when it comes to him as a basketball coach, he is very respected by his players, and I think that he's very good at what he does. And I think that his tenure with the Celtics, albeit short, showed organizations and players that this guy is a very good coach. Another thing is, it often gets overlooked just how easy it is for certain guys to be good on defense. If you are like an average sized NBA player, if you're like 6'6" with a 6'9" wingspan, you're athletic, you can be a good defender. Defense is all about effort. It's all about hustle. It's all about doing the little things that anybody can do. Communicating, playing hard on the perimeter. Like, it's all about effort and communication. Every good defense, regardless of how athletic or not, or how freakish or not their anchors have been, or, regardless of how freakishly athletic a guy like Kawhi Leonard is, or a guy like Paul George is, or a guy like Anthony Davis is, you can only get by on athleticism to a degree. I think that Steve Jones Jr. had a very good take on this. He tweeted, "Little things with the Rockets defense stand out to me. Sticking with Cutter, sliding under Gordon on a handoff, switch versus Jokic and Şengün keeps pursuing for a block, calling out off-ball switches, not giving up versus back cuts." Let's go ahead and watch a couple of these plays that Steve Jones is talking about. And keep in mind, this is against the Denver Nuggets, the best team in the NBA, some would say. Like, fighting over this screen that Aaron Gordon sets, recovering on this Jokic layup, being able to block it. I mean, this is like little things. I mean, there wasn't any particular athletic explosion on that play. Again, picking up in transition, communicating on screens, putting your hands in the passing lanes on back cuts. These are things that do not require high levels of athleticism. These are not things that require innate defensive instincts like someone like Draymond Green has. This is just doing the dirty work. This is doing what needs to be done. This is building the habits that championship defenses build. And Ime Udoka is doing a fantastic job of instilling that into a team who has been treated like shit for the last year, because let's be honest, they played like shit last season, and we had every excuse to shit on them. And he's been able to calm these young players and just instill in them good defensive habits. And not only that, he is putting in a game plan that is very basic. There is nothing extravagant about what Houston does on defense. They switch, they communicate, and they've been very effective of it. That same game against the Nuggets, they held Denver to 104 points on 46% shooting from the field. Denver is currently leading the league in field goal percentage at 50, and they are the 10th most voluminous offense in the NBA at 114.8. This is Nikola Jokic. This is Aaron Gordon. Granted, they didn't have Jamal Murray, but it doesn't fucking matter who they have or who they don't have if Nikola Jokic is still there. You still have Aaron Gordon. You still have Michael Porter Jr. You Still have Contavious Caldwell Pope. All things considered, I am like rabidly impressed with Houston. And what's most impressive about this is that it's been 9 games. This is a very this is a decent sample size to extrapolate and to talk about. I feel that regardless of what happens with Houston this season, they will conclude it as among the best defensive teams in the NBA. And it's because they're doing all the little things. They're they're doing all the little things. They have great discipline. I really can't rave enough about how impressive this young unit looks on defense, and again, doing so without an elite defensive anchor. Like Şengün has been very solid for them. I already mentioned Dylan Brooks, but like they really don't have anybody else notable. I mean, you look at Jabari Smith Jr. and Jayshawn Tate, I guess, is leading the team with 1.6 steals. Like that's another thing is they don't create a lot of turnovers. They play very disciplined defense. They are 24th in steals per game and they are 29th in blocks. They're also 22nd in personal fouls. So again, very disciplined defense. Udoka is not looking for them to play the passing lanes, try to create runouts, because if you do put Jalen Green in the passing lane and he whiffs, you're playing 5-on-4. And if you're playing 5-on-4, that's a losing battle. Same thing with Tate. Same thing with Jabari Smith Jr. As long as they pick and choose their times, it's okay. But I think I want to bring this video to a close. I've spent 20 minutes talking about the Houston Rockets. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.